Good morning, everyone. Starting a practice is already hard enough, but starting a practice by yourself as a solo practitioner, yeah, that's what we're talking about today. Dr. Joe Pazona is a urologist who's kind of bounced around the country for a while, and now he's landed in Nashville. He reached out to me wanting to pay it forward to share his journey so far in starting a solo private urology practice. So I'm very excited to have him on the program and even more excited to have him share his journey in 2021, how he started his solo practice in the middle of a pandemic last year and how he is doing. Thank you so much for coming on, Joe, and for sharing your story.
Thanks, John. Yeah, I should really have my head checked. Opening a solo practice during COVID, you'd question my sanity. I think I had good reason. And honestly, you're partly to blame. I think with what you have shared with this community, John, and not only with your venture, but introduced me to other solopreneurs, Wayne Kwong out in New Mexico, Aaron Grotis in New York, just two of the folks. I'm sure there's more I'm forgetting. Really inspired me to show that not only can you open a solo practice, you can thrive in one. And so I thought it was time to just, share an update. People have been giving me a call and wanted to give some tactics and different things I've learned. And I'm still learning along the way. By no means are we done evolving.
Yeah, certainly is not for everybody, right? Starting your own
Yeah.
practice, it's a lot of work. But you bounced around. You worked in groups before, right? You were in Washington and Alabama. So briefly, give us a review of where you've been and how you ended up being a solopreneur.
Yeah, I trained out in Chicago, only doctor in my family after having lived in New York, and decided it was time to see some mountains. So I moved out west to Washington State, and a beautiful practice. Well-trained urologist. I was one of five. We were in a rural setting, kind of did everything out of necessity because patients couldn't travel elsewhere, and just had a really great start to my career, great mentorship. And then, global recession hits, changes in prostate cancer screening guidelines, mesh is evil, and then all of a sudden you see a lot of elective urology business dry up. And when you're in a rural community that is not growing, you really see the effects. And so I just reached that plateau where I said, is this it? Is this all I was meant for? Everything was fine. But we had some changes in leadership, and I said, I should probably see what else is out there. And one of those kind of dream jobs on paper, hospital employed positions came up in Alabama, of all places. And at the time I was married and with my three kids, and we took the leap of faith and headed down to Montgomery. And unfortunately, things did not work out for both professional and personal reasons. Went through, some tough times. Got divorced, unfortunately. I know I'm not the only one out there, and know that you can survive it. And it's hard as a physician to go through that.
I think it's
And
hard
so
for anybody.
it certainly is when you're, when all the pressure's on you and you're the financial safety net. When you're going through that and still having to show up at work
Oh yeah.
and operate and give your best to patients, we're professionals. We don't get sick days, John.
And you don't and you don't let your emotions get into your everyday practice, or at least you try not to. Nobody wants that. Nobody expects that. So we tend to kind of hide everything inside. I totally get it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want other people to realize that you're not alone, and that luckily I had some fantastic friends and colleagues be there to kind of help. And ultimately, I just said, okay, I can feel sorry for myself and complain about the system, or I can go find the very best situation for my family and professionally. And so that's how I ended up in Nashville about 2 years ago.
Okay, great. So 2 years ago, you started to practice. You've been in private practice world for about 13 years. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I've been out of residency about 13 years. I joined a group when I came to Nashville, and then COVID hit. and it was my first real foray, John, into true private practice.
Got
Hospital
it.
employed positions, you just kind of put all the business stuff to the side, get your paycheck. Certainly it's incentive based, but you don't have to worry about staffing, running a business like you know very well.
Well, I still contend that you still need to know a little bit about the business aspect of your practice, even if you are a hospital employee, because the remuneration obviously is built most likely, most commonly, it's base pay plus production and productivity.
Mm-hmm.
So if you reach a certain threshold, then you get more payment. But how is that threshold calculated? Using what methods, what valuation,
Mm-hmm.
and what is the conversion factor if there's one?
Mm-hmm.
Are they fairly calculating your work RVUs, right? You can say that you don't care about the business aspects, but everyone else around you cares about the business aspects of your practice. So I think it would behoove any urologist, employed or private practice, to know a little bit about the business. Actually, not a little bit, but a lot about the business of
Mm-hmm.
urology.
Oh, I completely agree, John. And certainly, in those first 12 years or so, was certainly intimately involved in those aspects. And then you reach the frustration point when you know more about the business than the people who are making the business decisions. And the levers are difficult to pull. And I think anyone who's been in a hospital employed position has probably felt that frustration where you feel hamstrung going, why are we doing this? I see a very simple solution to improve efficiency, get more new patients in here, adequately provide follow-up. But you're left with a lot of administrators who are not practitioners, or you have colleagues who are, jealous, frankly, and say, well, you're just an overpaid specialist. And they don't see the value in what we as urologists provide. And if you're in a situation where you feel that way, you're not alone. I know I certainly felt that way.
Well, one of the things that a lot of urologists miss is that, yes, the hospital is making money off of you from your productivity, from just providing the service to the patient, but you are also ordering a ton of labs and ancillary services from the hospitals. In one of my posts last year or the year before, there was an article saying that we urologists, individual urologists, generate about $2.1 million to the hospital every single year
Mm-hmm.
on ancillaries, not just the services that you provide directly to the patients, but everything else that we do: orders, pathology, laboratory studies, imaging. So physical therapy, who knows?
Mm-hmm.
It creates a lot of value for the hospital. So don't just think in terms of how many patients you've seen, how many work RVUs you produce. A lot of people miss out on that aspect. Okay, fast forwarding. Now you are 2 years. So you joined a group in Nashville initially?
I did. Yeah, I joined a group with a hospital guarantee. So came in with at least a guaranteed year salary, and was able to kind of set up an office in a new location for them. And but really it was a eat what you kill model, every man and woman for himself. Good group of people, and then again about 6-7 months in, COVID hits, and all of a sudden you see volumes dry up and you start projecting, or at least I did, what life was going to look like post COVID in their particular business model. And the numbers just didn't add up. Just without going into details, I think one frustration some people probably have in a group practice, you are stuck in the framework of what the senior partners have developed. And sometimes they're open-minded and willing to consider alternative options, and other times they're not. And you can either complain and fight it, or do what I did and say, I think there's a better way, and I'm going to go do this on my terms, on my own.
Well, like I said, private practice is, or starting a practice is definitely not for everybody. But I think you've bounced around enough to and experienced enough different practices to know you. So you have to know
Mm-hmm.
yourself. You have to be self-aware of what your likes and dislikes and what are the absolute lines that you will not cross and things that you will absolutely not do in your own professional life. I was in a practice when I first started for 3 years. And I remember similar to what you went through, bringing up ideas and things that I want to try. And I think this might be a way for the practice to grow. But the comment from my long-standing, long-term office manager was, John, we've done it the same way for the last 18 years. We're not going to change because you have some ideas. Well, I left that practice and that practice imploded shortly after, completely shut down.
Mhm.
unfortunately, for the folks in that community. So innovation and progression is definitely the way to go. Nothing stays the same, and unless you are always, and I think I mentioned this, you were in attendance at the New Orleans Urology Advanced Coding and Reimbursement Seminar
Mhm.
right before the pandemic. I mean, last
Yes.
year. And I said this, you always have to be doing this SWOT analysis. You have to be assessing your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats all the time.
Mhm.
And that's how
Mhm.
you can grow as a practice and actually, frankly, as an individual. So knowing yourself and you realizing, hey, you know what? I know a better way. I think I can do better, and so you struck out right in the middle of the pandemic. So how was
Yes.
tell me about that process. So you left this
Well,
group in Nashville, and then now you started your own solo practice during the pandemic.
I did, and it was a challenge, no doubt, and it still is. We're about 7 months in. I think that part of I was starting to lay the groundwork, John, even from the day I showed up, and it wasn't with intention of ever leaving. I had hope of the group working out, but I very much started investing in online reputation. I know something that you are a big proponent of. And so from day one, built out a website, built out a Google My Business profile, and just started very just organically and in a very inefficient way, just asking patients for reviews. And that started. I started identifying where are primary care doctors not having their patients' needs met. Nashville is a big town. There are a lot of outstanding urologists here, but I'm coming in 10, 20 years later than they are. I'm competing with a Vanderbilt. I don't have the same uh, opportunities and levers I can pull as those big entities. So I really drill down on customer service, making sure that I was known as the guy who was going to spend time with the patients and really provide an outstanding customer experience.
What
And
so if I can stop you real quick, what were some of the things during your research in the local area? What were some of the things that are missing that the existing practices are not providing?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I would challenge anyone else listening to this who's considering is do a market analysis, really look at your particular opportunity. What I identified in Nashville was very different than what I saw down in Alabama, which may be very different what you see in Chicago or a more rural setting. So what I saw here, John, from patients was complaints about big groups. Big groups obviously come together and leverage capital and manpower and ancillaries, and there's some and insurance contracts, but they then tend to suffer in customer service. So I saw that as one opportunity. An academic institute, I'm not going to compete with them with advanced prostate care, cancer care, volume of robotic prostatectomies, but I can provide a great service. The other thing I looked at, and this is just, I've done a ton of business reading and ideas from people smarter than me, is, find what's your unique ability? What's your unique sales proposition?
USP,
And
unique value, unique sales or unique value proposition. Yeah.
absolutely.
Unique
And so
selling
what I
proposition.
saw, right over your shoulder there, all juice, no seed, was that I felt like I did a really good no needle, no scalpel vasectomy. I looked up online and there was no presence for vasectomy in Nashville. And I go, how can you have a population of 1 million+ people and nobody is attempting to enter this sphere? And so I've put all my efforts in on being known as the vasectomy guy. And as you know, John, that can take you a long way and then be a jumping off point for other service lines. It's a predictable procedure that provides great outcomes when you do it well. And there are young people who are on social media who talk. I just had a coworker. I'll give you an example. I said a coworker send over her husband. She rallied up two of his other buddies. You can go to my social media page and see it. I kept the office open late on the Wednesday last week, and I stayed and did all three of their vasectomies. I did a group consult in the waiting room. I locked the door. We didn't do our physical exam out there, but I did all three of their vasectomies. They went home and they've been telling all their buddies, and I've already seen two or three friends just from that. So find what you're good at, find what is missing in the market, and we can always provide a great patient experience. What's lacking for medicine isn't a shortage of experts or a shortage of people who can do a great robotic prostate. What our colleagues unfortunately are missing is how to just be a kind, positive person in a patient's life. And that's unfortunate because I know there's a lot of good people out there who are burnt out. I know I was. I know I wasn't always the best version of myself in my journey, and it takes some time. But if you can always remember that the patient is there to see you, and that a smile can get you more business than any website or volume, I think it behooves everybody to remember that.
So many great points that you covered. And that smile goes a long way. Not just you, but your support staff. Everyone around.
Mhm.
I found over the years that everyone around you makes a big difference in your practice. Even, well, it starts from the first phone call. Even before the first phone call, before they call you, they're already checking you out. Like you said, Joe, they're checking you out online. And right now, if you're going to spend any time or effort on growing your business, Google reviews is going to be the number one, followed by probably Yelp, and then all the other ones are down, way
Mhm.
down the order list. But if you're going to spend any time, like you already discovered, Joe, Google, number one, right? Number one search engine in the world.
Absolutely.
And if you have the time or interest, then YouTube is the number two search engine in the world. And guess who owns Google? Who owns YouTube? Google does.
Right.
So they are intertwined. And you've already discovered the power of uh, third party endorsement and social proof
Mhm.
in your efforts in 7 months, and finding that and I want to kind of dig a little bit deeper into uh, patient experience that you mentioned that is lacking in some of the larger groups. And I found that in my area as well. They become oh, I guess a big business machine, and
Mhm.
sometimes they miss out on the social aspects of taking care of the patient. And sometimes there's no buy-in from everybody. Maybe you
Mhm.
have very interested physicians, but unfortunately, the support staff may not all be on board. So, what did you find exactly is missing in your local area relative to customer service?
Yeah, that's a great question, John. And I think the best way to answer it is to circle back to what you said about staffing. There's a lot of wonderful urologists in Nashville. There's a lot of wonderful urologists listening to this right now. But if you have a rude receptionist, if you have a medical assistant who's gossiping about how drunk she got last night, or showing up late, your patient sees that, and that will destroy a business faster than anything. My number one complaint that I hear from patients is, I like the doctor, but dot dot dot, and it's everything else, right? Now, don't get me wrong. There's some jerks out there as well, and we're not addressing them. They're probably not listening to this. But I really keyed in on staffing. So I don't care at all. And my recommendation to anyone out there is, urology experience can be taught. You can't teach nice. You can't teach dependable. You can't teach easy to work with. And so my staff right now is all just good people who I am training up. And it's also very lean. I really just have right now, other than my soon-to-be wife, who's working my front desk and actively trying to be fired by her own admission. She's a sweetheart, and she's definitely helped. This is a family affair. You need some help opening a practice. I just have one medical assistant in person. And I have just hired, John, my third and fourth virtual assistants, who are basically my front office and back office staff. And my patients love them. They absolutely love them. And it's been the best decision I've made, is moving forward with these assistants, because they're first and foremost about customer service and following our mission, which is an exceptional patient experience. Not going for mediocre or very good or above average. I want exceptional. And I'm not going to always, as we all know, we can't solve every problem, but my patients are at least going to know that everybody was nice and smiled and cared about them.
So tell me a little bit more about this virtual assistant. I know I've talked about this pre-pandemic, and I was starting to just getting into it, and then pandemic hit, and I adopted telemedicine and all that stuff. Tell me, who do you use? How do you implement them, and all that good stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. So I use HelloRache, RACHE. I believe you and some of the members have recommended them before. And they are, for those who aren't familiar, a US-based company that hires Filipino, predominantly nurses, to work virtually for your office. And so I think one thing, why did I do this? Well, during COVID, you see the effects of furloughing people. You saw how high overhead can be. I mean, staffing and rent are going to be your two highest costs in opening a practice. And staffing is going to be your number one challenge. Just accept that. It's going to be hard to find good people. And so I said, well, can we find good people at a fraction of the cost and use technology? So the way I set up my office, John, we signed up with a VoIP, or voice over internet phone provider. I tried one of the big ones at first, and it was just bad customer service. And so I got fortunate enough to find someone locally here in Nashville called Magic Apple, and they work with people throughout the country. I'd be happy to make a referral, and they've been fantastic. And so my first two virtual assistants have soft phone capabilities. So when you dial Pazona MD, you're going to get one of my first two virtual assistants before my front desk phone ever rings. So whether the office is closed or not, I've got two people working around the clock. And that does two things. Number one, it keeps my phone lines and my front desk person focused on who is there. So you'll notice if you come into my office, it's pretty quiet. The phone is not ringing off the hook, even though we're very busy and due to see over 300 patients this month, because I've got two people behind the scenes answering phones. So they work the fax line, they do all the referrals, and then they do a lot of the back office tasks where they are sending notes to referring providers, scheduling surgeries, getting prior authorizations. And I've just gotten so busy that I've now had to hire my third and fourth, and they're starting this Monday, actually. So we're going to continue to utilize them along with getting a full-time scribe, because they were too busy answering calls to scribe for me. But now I'm going to have someone just dedicated to scribe. So again, when I'm in with the patient, and I know you're big on this, John, I'm focused on the patient. I'm not typing away at my computer, and I just introduce him. I say, hey, this is Paulo. He's one of our team members, and he's just going to take some notes so I can focus on you. And patients love it.
That's a great way to phrase it.
Yeah, it's saying you're my focus, and I don't want to miss anything, because I do. How many times have we all left an office and you try to address everything? You covered their ED, their BPH, oh, they're due for PSA, oh, and they had some kidney stones, and invariably, unless you're really on top of things and dialed in, one of those things is going to get dropped. The ball's going to be dropped. And so now with the scribe in there actively doing this, they've got that order, and then they send it off to the different virtual assistant who handles each of those tasks.
Wow, that I'm sure took a lot of training of these virtual assistants, and because they have to learn your workflow, how you want a particular type of patient to go a certain route. So that's certainly a lot of effort. And I have some thoughts about nepotism, meaning having a family member working in the practice. That could be a good thing or a bad thing. It could be a cause for harmony or a cause for discord.
Yes, absolutely. Luckily, Catherine is a wonderfully supportive partner, and we joke about it, and certainly have had our moments of tension. But like any good relationship, you have good communication, and I couldn't have started this without her. And anyone considering this, you can't do this without the support of your loved ones, whoever that may be in your circle. This is a team effort. I mean, I'm putting in long hours. I'm typically up before 5 a.m., going through a morning routine, working on content for the website and my business, working all day, and then conversations about the practice. How do we do? What can we get better? Here I am on the weekend working on practice and trying to pay it forward to others. So
Yeah.
it's a team effort, no doubt.
Yeah.
But I think we'll both be happy when she gets fired.
I think it's a great thing that you're doing as far as sharing your knowledge and what you are going through, what you went through. And I think a lot of people will find value in learning your startup journey and the use of virtual assistants in your practice. I never use HelloRage. I just interviewed Dr. Grotas and Dr. Casperson, who both use HelloRage, and then I started learning more about it. And of course, the Facebook algorithm started tagging me and showing me HelloRage's ads. The only thing that I have that I worry about HelloRage or any sort of outsourced virtual assistant, especially out of the country, are the medical legal aspects, the HIPAA component. So I'm not, I don't have good clarity on that in my mind. That's why, and also I have a great established workflow with in real life medical assistants and things like that. I have a charmed life here in my practice. It's phenomenal, huge productivity, happy patients, great online reputation as a result, and patients are extremely happy. And I love what I do, and I hope people can see that I really enjoy what I do. And you mentioned about burnout and have I reached a plateau? Well, I thought I reached a plateau in my practice, but then it seems like every year, every other year, I'm breaking that record. I'm breaking that barrier. So we are often limited or held back by our limiting beliefs. We think, oh, this number is the top or the max, until someone comes in and says, oh no, you can do even better. And then you start thinking, oh, wait, what am I doing differently? Why am I not there? It can certainly give you a sense of FOMO, fear of missing out, right?
Oh yeah. No, John, you hit on some fantastic points. Everyone else who's successful in the business world outside of medicine understands these concepts, and there's books written about it. Bold by Peter Diamandis, the 10X Rule by Grant Cardone. We tend to have in medicine a fixed mindset. Oh, you can't open a private practice in 2021. You're crazy. Oh, you definitely can't be in solo practice. You're crazy. And listen, there's different models for different people. And yes, you have built a very successful venture that works for you. I wanted to show people there are different ways to do it while still remaining true to yourself and having your ethics and values be honored. I don't have the luxury of having been in Nashville for the past 15 years. I have moved around. I am the sole financial support for my family. I've got to be able to pull big levers, and you can't pull those big levers if you don't make big decisions. And so the virtual assistants have been great. And, don't get me wrong, they are still not where they need to be. But I know beyond a shadow of a doubt that when my patients talk to them, they're getting a kind, smiling voice from several thousand miles away. And patients value that. And so it is a lot of work. It's frustrating at times. But as I'm sure you know, John, it took you a while to find the right people. And once you do find the right people, pay them well.
Oh my gosh,
Give
treat them well. Now, so
treat them well.
a lot of people think are fixated on finances, how much they can pay. Yes, money matters, and money is important, but you get that bonus or you get that tip, and then the value is high, and then it wanes very, very quickly. It's how you treat your staff on the regular, on a daily basis. That's what really matters. And if you ask employees on exit interviews why they're leaving, it's not so much the pay, it's how they are treated. Are they respected? Are they valued in the practice? Or are they just dismissed? Or are they treated poorly? That is what is more important than the pay itself. So finding ways, I'm always trying to find ways to how do I incentivize my staff? How do I what are other practices doing to help promote greater harmony and greater cooperativity within the practice, and how do you reward your staff without just throwing money at them?
It's a great point, John. And if you look at, to further your comment on studies, people love their job if it provides them with growth, a feeling of competence, and a feeling of autonomy. Don't micromanage me. Give me something to build toward and make me feel like I'm a part of something and I'm doing a good job. And then you pay them fairly. You don't want to be a cheapskate, and certainly you want to, I think, aligning incentives in medicine is something we really missed the mark on. I mean, you could look at every venture from, let's just look at an operating room. The values are not aligned. What's the job of
100%.
the surgeon, right? We want to get
100%.
in, get out, do as many cases as possible, and get out. Everyone else is a shift worker. They're not incentivized to have a speedy turnover to get things moving efficiently.
Oh my gosh, we think the same way.
Yeah, and you can do the same thing in your office. I'm still tinkering with those things. Looking also into sort of some different cash opportunities outside of insurance in terms of building the practice. So don't think it's not possible. I once said to myself, there's no way you could open a solo practice today and survive. And then I found John Lynn, Wayne Kwong, and Aaron Grotus, and proved me wrong. And so here I am finding the next Joe Pazona who's out there who goes, I can't do this. You can, if it's truly what you want. If you've done that soul searching and you have that support and you decide, hey, I think there's a better way, and I'd be happy to help in any way I can for any of you that are out there.
There's a wonderful podcast that I discovered recently by Dr. Weitz. She's in her 50s. She's retired, and I think she was also in the Nashville area. Anyway, very successful. She's married to a urologist, two-physician family, and she's retired. She started this podcast. I think it's called Private Medical Practice or something like that. But she pretty much in her first every single episode pretty much lays out the groundwork of how you want to look at a startup. And she goes into detail about the pluses and minuses, and also how do you handle lease? How do you handle furniture? How do you handle staffing? How do you even just determine whether or not you should be in a particular demographic, in a particular location? So wonderful podcast. I'll try to link the name in the video description, but Dr. Sandra Weitz, I believe, Weitz. Wonderful lady. I spoke with her actually on via Zoom because I found her content so valuable, and she was so gracious and shared a lot of good information. So once you get to that point, I think people are finding that it's just like you want to share it, you want to pay it forward. And I will tell you that as you probably already received a lot of inquiries about how you are doing it, I too get these DMs and emails and messages all the time. And I will tell you, there are people out there right now who are doing what you have done. Who they're about to start their solo practices.
Yeah. Oh, no, absolutely. And just finished a great book by Dan Sullivan, who is the head of Strategic Coach, one of the foremost entrepreneurial experts and guides in the world. And the book is called Who, Not How. Instead of asking, how can I do this? Say, who can help me do this? Who can do this for me? And there are people who have done it for you. It's very easy as you're starting out to go, oh my God, how do I get insurance contracts? How do I find a space? Am I in the right market? There's people who can figure this out for you. There's people who can guide you. That's their job, and rely on them. And don't look at it as a cost. Look at it as an investment, because there is a laundry list of things you have to consider, but that's the easy part. The hard part is saying, what is best for you? What are the pros and cons? Is this really right for you? And this is not right for everybody. I mean, there's a lot of uncertainty. But for me personally, as I'm sure for you, John, that autonomy, that growth, it's exciting. I mean, I don't feel like I've gone to work in 7 months.
Exactly.
I mean, but yet I don't know if I've worked this hard since residency. I mean, I'm starting to like do the pre 80-hour work week counting of like, all right, how many hours did I put in? And I just stopped because I'm like, I actually enjoy it. And I'm probably happier and more fit from a mental and physical standpoint than I've ever been in my life, opening a private practice in a competitive market in the middle of COVID.
Yes.
I mean,
yeah, and you mentioned this a couple of times. You haven't been in Nashville for 10, 15, 20 years like everyone else, but that could be an advantage too. I'm sure you've seen patients who have said to you, "Oh, I wanted a younger doctor who is more up to date." So I realized one day I'll be one among the older set, but you certainly have an advantage and want to leverage your advantage. That is certainly 100% for sure. The other thing that you keep mentioning, you name drop Cardone, Sullivan. One thing that I'm picking up from you is that you are an avid student of how to run a business or how to be successful, how to be an entrepreneur, which is nothing but a modern term for businessman, really.
Yeah.
So you are an avid student, and I think that is key. You want to read, you want to expand your knowledge base, and not just in medicine. I think people who are well suited for starting their own practice or starting a business are great students. They learn from other people who have done it, who have made the mistakes and have had successes. Why repeat the same mistakes, right? And I had I actually he's in this group, Dr. T.J. Morris. He's actually been here in my practice 5 different times. just to pick up
Yeah.
ideas and things like that. And I keep asking TJ, well, why are you here again? Because you've been here so many times, and he says every time I'm here, I'm picking up something new, and it's true. This conversations like what we are having, that you and I are having, and hopefully some people are picking up some of these hints and tips in bringing success to them. This type of conversation that typically happens after a meeting, right? After some presentation, I find most value in these types of conversations, often even more value than the actual presentation themselves, because this is where we let our hair down and just kind of talk among ourselves and share ideas and not be so confined by the rules. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, John, you're very astute. It's a shame most of us go into medicine because we love learning. I mean, you wouldn't have made it through medical school and residency if you did not read a book. And we get just so burnt out by everything. You get to a point in practice in the real world where that sadly stops. And again, mine was born out of necessity and, a change in my mindset to say, I'm not looking to just be some busy on-call doctor, increasing my net revenue by another 10%. I'm figuring out how to 100x what I do in medicine from both a fulfillment standpoint and a financial standpoint. And you have to read. And I think if you ask, at least when I speak to my colleagues who've been to law school and MBA, and I explain to them how we do things in medicine, I mean, they just shake their heads. I mean, I was part of an office where I was told I couldn't see more patients in clinic because the medical assistants needed time to scan papers and fax them. And I'm thinking to myself, why are you even having paperwork in an office? It's 2021.
Oh my
Have you heard of an
gosh.
e-fax? I mean, and you make all your money in the office. I mean, I was just blown away, similar comments to what you heard. And so I think learning from others outside business, we unfortunately, there's this mindset that's set when we start medicine that no, medicine's different. Marketing and sales is dirty. You can't do that. This is not a business. It's a business. And everybody is in sales. From the second you walk into a room with a patient, you are a salesperson. Now, you might be trying to sell that person on reassurance that their prostate cancer has not metastasized. You may be selling the patient that their testicular pain is musculoskeletal and they don't have intermittent torsion. Whatever it is, you are selling. And I think it would be a shame to not utilize these strategies and tactics that are out there from people who are a lot smarter, more successful than us. So, John, I probably have, in the past 2 years, have read 120 to 150 books. I've done online courses. I just finished a entrepreneurial acceleration program through the Wharton Business School at UPenn. I'm about to start one through Kellogg. I love it. It's invigorated me, and I'm still learning, and I don't plan on retiring because I just want to keep learning. I mean, I'm making a lot less money than I did several years ago. Don't get me wrong. I mean, there are cons. I'm putting in long hours, but I've also never been happier.
But you know what? You may be putting in, you're building the infrastructure right now. You're laying the foundation, but give it more time. I
Hmm.
am, let's see now, 2006, so about 14 years into my solo practice, and yeah, the financial aspect will you'll get there, and
Yeah.
you're not only going to leverage what you personally produce in the mostly in the office, but also other opportunities that I have no doubt that you are going to come into and look for and leverage. Just from talking with you and hearing what you've been doing, there's no doubt that you're going to be just fine. There's no doubt
Well,
in my mind.
well, thanks, John. I hope to be an overnight 14-year success like yourself, and I think that's what people don't realize. And I told myself at the start of this year, my one mantra is patience. Because I'm sure a lot similar to most people watching this, we're impatient surgeons. I'm a type A person. I went to surgery. I want results. I want them now. And this sort of stuff is a long, slow burn, and you have to have faith. And you're going to have moments of doubt. I still have them every week where I question, what am I doing? I'm no good at this. How can I think I can compete with these people? But I know in my hardest of hearts that if I am building towards something that is focused on the doctor patient relationship, and I don't mean that in a corny way, I truly believe that, and that if I do it in an ethically way and leverage all of these things, that yes, no doubt success will come financially, but I already feel that success internally. And so that for now, that's good enough.
That is great. Now, with you starting the practice during the pandemic, a lot of us have shifted into doing different things such as telemedicine. I was just barely looking into it at the beginning of 2020, through interviewing other practices on how to do things. How have you leveraged telemedicine?
Yeah, it's a great question. So John, as a new practice, obviously, I'm not at the tipping point that say you are, where you've got to really think about which patients come see you in person and which are suitable for follow-up. I think that's a great model that you're building. I love when you talked about the coding course. You want to leave as many spots open for in-office procedures and new patients, and then utilize telemedicine for follow-ups. That's brilliant. My journey into telemedicine is more on a global scale. I started thinking about this back in 2018. I went to the American Telemedicine Association meeting, pre-COVID, and just saw what's on the wall, that by the year 2025, we're going to be short 9,000 urologists. If you look at full-time equivalents, huge retiring population. A quarter of residents are female and are obviously juggling home work life balance and choosing not to maybe work full time. And so there's going to be a big problem. But yet we're doing a great job of keeping people alive. Our cardiology friends and oncologists are doing too good of a job, but everybody still has a plumbing issue. And so we have to think creatively, and I think the AUA is kind of doing this, but I think that we can do it in a better way. And so basically, pre-pandemic, I started storyboarding and wireframing a business plan and a website for a telemedicine company. So we talk about how I want to 10x or 100x what I'm doing. Well, I'm only one person, but can we create an entity to access more patients through direct to consumer care? Things that you and I are doing in our private practices, why can't we do that on a global scale? And then identify those patients at the top of the funnel, John, all those untreated BPH patients, incontinence patients, get them on their first line therapy that we know our primary care colleagues are just don't have the time to do. And then of those who fail, then get them in front of a John Lynn for a UroLift. Get them in front of a urogynecologist to have that axonics or sling procedure. I think there's a huge opportunity, and that's really what I'm looking at with telemedicine is how can I create an entity that can better reach patients as well as create a great job for urologists. I think all of us probably liked telemedicine to a degree. I mean, you got business up top and party down below. You don't have to wear pants to work. And I won't lower my camera right now. Trust me. Uh, uh, I'm being
I assure
serious.
you, I'm fully dressed.
I'm not going to comment on that one, John. But there's a better way to utilize the urology workforce. There's so many inefficiencies. You're killing it as an in-person urologist who is just maximizing efficiency. You are squeezing every last drop out of how can I run an in-office practice to its max. And I want to provide an alternative to people who maybe aren't in the same situation, don't have the same skill set, and have a different set of skills, and say, well, with telemedicine, we break down a lot of those barriers and we can provide great care.
I wish there's a way to do virtual, tactile with good haptic feedback, digital rectal examination and scrotal examination.
Well, right, and listen, I mean, in other specialties, I mean, they are, there's remote stethoscopes, there's remote otoscopes. I mean, it's pretty, listen, you're never going to replace the hands of an experienced urologist. I think there's all these people who are poo-pooing telemedicine. No one's arguing that. No one's arguing that if you have a testicular mass, you need a good in-person exam. But if you've had that good in-person exam and a normal scrotal ultrasound, and you feel like nobody has listened to you and your balls are still hurting, why shouldn't you be able to get a second opinion from another urologist right from home? I don't need to re-examine that guy. I don't need to talk kidney stone prevention in person. I don't need to, even for a low risk BPH patient, not be able to start them on an alpha blocker. I mean, there's a lot of things, we see probably up to 50%, whether it be inpatient or outpatient urology. If we just talk to the patient, we could have gotten just as far, and the exam sheds very little light.
Yeah, but when it comes to scrotal pain or scrotal complaints, even if the patient has seen other people, I still want to examine them, though.
Sure.
And I find a lot of value in physical examination, especially for that new patient. I like to establish that face-to-face trust. And as you know, I love technology and I love telemedicine. And when I do telemedicine, this is the setup that I have in the office with studio lighting, with the hair light, with a 4K camera, and I've got two screens in front of me. So I love technology. I love telemedicine, but there are limitations, and physical examination was one of them. Whenever I do one of my vasectomies, and being the number one vasectomist in Arizona, I'm always thinking, how can I replace myself? How can I? Is there some technologies that's going to allow a robot to feel for that vas deferens and then be able to perform the procedure, which I think is the most difficult part, finding the vas, because everybody's scrotum's every man's scrotum's a little bit different. So I'm always thinking, how do I put myself out of a job?
Yeah, that's a
Telemedicine,
great.
the
Yeah.
telemedicine has some limitations,
hmm
but it definitely has a lot of utility. I do it every single day, and I think it's great for those follow-up visits when you want to go over the results of a scan or results of a genomic or genetic test, where it's just conversation when examination is not necessary. You can do that at the patient's leisure after 5 p.m. They're at home, they're sitting down with their families or spouse, and you can have that conversation with them. It works really well, and you think that it takes a long time to carry out these conversations. It does not. I recently posted the average duration of my telemedicine visits. It's really short. So telemedicine definitely has a place, and it will not replace any visit that requires a physical examination.
I agree with you, John, and I'm not making any argument that it's ever going to. But what I would argue is the pharmaceutical industry have done studies. We're probably capturing about 1% of the OAB market. And why is that? Because we don't have great awareness that for patients that there's solutions, and primary care doctors are seeing more and more patients in a shorter amount of time, and incontinence is number 12 on the list of things they've got to hit. So I even look at telemedicine as a way to, again, capture that top of the funnel. Again, always be thinking about not only from a business perspective, but just a patient access perspective. John, you want people who are coming into your office going, I've failed Flomax. I've limited my caffeine. I've already had imaging showing a 40-gram prostate. I want you to do my UroLift. That's a slam dunk. That's a patient you want. You don't want to have to be working up that BPH. And so I think there's an opportunity for telemedicine to, again, we're not talking about reaching people who live in Phoenix and can drive 5 minutes to your office. We're never going to compete with that. But if you're 2 hours away and you had no idea, and through clever digital marketing and awareness, we have done a basic evaluation, and then a telemedicine board certified urologist calls you up, John, and says, John, I've got about 3 guys who need UroLift. When can you work them in? You're going to work them in because you're a smart guy and you want to help those people. So I think there's an opportunity because we are all going to be facing this as urologists. And this is something I want to harp on. And I know you have, John. You've got to think about creative ways to get the right people in front of you and work to your highest ability. I know you're big on that. And we unfortunately, we're not going to have the ability to see every patient for however long they want. We have to think of other ways because we are going to get to a point where you're going to be swamped and burnt out. And so I love that you're already doing that proactively. And I think telemedicine provides an opportunity to do that as well, and then provide a warm handoff, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm going to get you, you need an in-person guy. Okay, you live in Memphis. I know a great guy who's there. I'm going to call him up and get you in.
Yeah, definitely creating, first of all, creating awareness is key. BPH is such a big problem, and yet, not many people even know about minimally invasive treatment options. Everybody, or including some of the primary care doctors, know that, okay, well, there's medicine and then there's TERP. They don't know of anything in between that doesn't cause any sexual side effects, that doesn't cause any urinary incontinence, with fast recovery and minimal catheterization, if any. So bringing awareness is number one. And then you said that the workup, what you're describing for telemedicine, the top of the funnel, a lot of practices are doing in person. So they're having to do it in a local fashion instead of a hyper local or regional or global fashion. So that telemedicine concept is key. I mean, 40 million men in the U.S. alone annually with BPH. We're not doing them. We're not doing all of them a service. And just for urologists existing in the U.S. to take care of just men with BPH, there just aren't enough urologists.
No.
So to be able to funnel them through, and like you said, have all urologists working at the top of our license, meaning we shouldn't really be doing much medical management. That should be delegated to somebody else. And urologists should be concentrating on procedures and doing those and doing more of those and doing them really, really well, because that's what we're trained to do. When somebody else can be doing all the other stuff, we shouldn't be doing those things. Anyway, that's what I mean by working at the top of the license, and you fully understand that concept.
Yeah, no, absolutely, John. And I think you can even go a step further. And this is something that I've done. There's something you mentioned earlier that's sparked this. I don't want to be that old stodgy urologist who just keeps doing things the old way. I'm 13 years in and things have changed. So, for example, I made the decision to not purchase a transrectal ultrasound for my office. And you go, well, that's crazy. Why would you do that? And I say, well, here I am. I'm near 2 big groups that do MRI fusion biopsies. I haven't learned that. I'm sure I could if I had the volume. Elevated PSA volume takes some time to build up. I'm going more direct to consumer with problems. And so I said, listen, if someone does this better than I do, they should do it. If I'm no longer doing the same robotic volume that I was a couple of years ago, I shouldn't be doing robotic prostatectomies when I've got great colleagues down the street who are doing hundreds a year. And so, yes, we should be operating at the top of our license, but we should also, I encourage all of you to really take a look at your skill set. And there shouldn't be ego with this. There's no judgment. When you've been doing this as long as you and I have, John, all the big sexy surgeries aren't so sexy anymore. You see more of the headaches, but it's just doing what's best for the patient. And so there's plenty of things I don't do, and I'm slowly shutting down if I'm no longer doing the volume. And so some urologists maybe are not going to be doing all these big cases, and we should get them to that person. And maybe some of us say, you know what? I hate going to the hospital. I really liked working from home. I like office urology. I think there should be job opportunities for those people as well, because the alternative is they're retiring early or just quitting. I mean, I know a number of urologists right now, some may be part of this group, who are currently not practicing urology and they're in the prime of their career. They are not practicing, and it's because they're burnt out and they're sick of the job options that are out there, and I don't blame them. So I just we've got to be innovative. There's so many neat ways to think about this, and let's not limit our mindset. Let's think of better ways to do this, because the model is just headed in a bad direction. Hospitals gobbling up groups, you're becoming a cog in the wheel. Insurance companies aren't going to one day wake up and start paying us more or giving us more freedom. It's just not going to happen. So we've got to spark innovation, and if I can hopefully be a little part of that and spark an interest in any of you, that's my goal.
Well, I think you're going to probably be getting some inquiries from people in the in the weeds, just kind of watching, or lurkers. I call them lurkers. They watch and listen. They don't really comment, but they may like a particular video or a piece of content. They'll probably reach out to you directly, and so you probably have to check your DM pretty soon.
I'm absolutely. Well, I'm happy to, and I'm happy to chat with anybody. I mean, I think the other thing, you talked about learning. I've learned from people. I've learned from you, John. I've learned from lots of people, both in and out of medicine. And I learned from people who maybe, a year or two behind me. There's a lot of you with great ideas who haven't taken this leap yet. And I've tried to do more networking. I think we love residency. The one part we miss is that collegiality. And when you go out in the private world, you lose that. I think our academic colleagues do a better job of keeping that. And so I think this is imperative. In fact, I know it is. So whether it be via LinkedIn, Facebook, reach out to other urologists. I think we all went into this field because most of us are pretty good folks. Yeah. It's rare you meet a jerk who's a urologist. So
that's true.
I'd love to help anyone. So
yeah, that's true. And it's part of my goal in this creating this group is to show that you can share ideas, and I'm freely share my ideas and help other people, because there's more than enough to go around. I will end with this. There's more than enough patients, more than enough business to go around. Even though you think that you are in a super competitive environment, just do what you did, what you've already done, what you just started doing is treating patients nicely, knowing what are their pain points, and addressing those pain points head on, instead of just doing things the way you've been doing them. So being a student, I think, is important, and always be open to ideas, and don't be afraid to ask for help. So we will end with that.
Yes, I couldn't have said it better myself, John.
Thank you so much, Joe, for sharing, for reaching out, first of all, and having the heart to want to share with other people what you are going through. And I'm sure we are not done hearing from you. And I am really looking forward to see what you will accomplish in the near future. You just started. You have just started, Joe. I know it. I know it.
Well, John, listen, I'm very humbled by your comments, and to be frank, I wouldn't be here if it weren't for people like you who are putting this together.
Oh, you're
and
too kind.
I mean that sincerely. I mean, we can clearly all see, John, the success you're building in an ethical, positive way, and that gave me hope, and said, you know what, John Lynn's doing it in Phoenix. Why can't Joe Pazona do it in Nashville and elsewhere? So thank you, John. It's been an honor to pay back in any way I can.
You are too kind. Thank you so much. And anyone with any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments below. Thanks a lot, Joe.
Thanks, John. Have a great day.
Bye.